Hi, Reggie. Hi, Regency. I'll just check that we're all working on the company page as well. These lives are absolutely brilliant, but at the same times, there's yeah, we're live. Good. So yeah, so today's session, please do join us. Please let us know where you're calling from today or joining us from today. Today's session is really about what are the key things that make social selling work. There is tons of people and tons of businesses out there saying social selling's this or social selling's that. And I really want to kind of create a level playing field and say, this is what it is. Also, culturally, one of the things we found over the last 7 years nearly, Maverick's 7 years old in March. One of the things we found over the 7 years we've been and I've been working in social selling is that what people's cultural behavior, if you don't change the behavior and the culture behind the way you're doing things, actually what happens is you have all this new learning. You get really excited. Hi, Mark. Hi, Zach. Hi, Richard. You get all of this new stuff, but then the deployment of it just reverts back to type. And I'll show you some examples of this, and then I'll show you some of the key principles of how social selling should work. And actually, some of the social selling, the good practice, actually feels bad compared to that some kind of instant culture we've kind of developed. Hi, Oliver from Shropshire. Hi, Mark. So we're going to go through this and I want to leave some time at the end to really ask questions about how you can implement this for yourself. Obviously, with the pandemic, more and more B2B sales has been done online, and LinkedIn has taken front and center stage there, but it isn't the only way to do it. And oddly enough, we've been showing some B2B businesses how to do this on Facebook, on Twitter, and other channels to really build relationships. And so, I put in the description of this event, what most people think of social selling, what they think they're doing is actually just the digital equivalent of a cold call. So I'm going to look at that, and then I'm going to give you some practical things you can do to actually implement this in your business. It will, and again, coming back to it, culture is massive in this, changing the culture of the way you sell to make this work, because, well, I'll come to that in a minute. So thank you for everybody coming. Hi, everybody, and we'll crack on. And I'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So, you can say, what do you mean by this? Or how do you see this working in a sales team? The full works. So just a quick intro. If you don't know who we are, Maverick, we're on a mission to help 1 million businesses grow their revenue, margin, and profit. Not just revenue at the sake of it. And we've helped around 150,000 businesses so far. So we've got to pick up the pace if we want to hit our target. So what is social selling? Now, I've used some clips here and I've blurred out things primarily to protect other people. I don't want to kind of name and shame. I'm not into that. So what you've got here is a graph from a social selling lead generation business. And on the right is what our methodology and how we teach it. Now, we've helped some clients with their social selling in terms of done with you services, but it's primarily not what we do. What we do is teach people how to do this for themselves, because I'm a firm believer that people buy from people. And so what you can see on the left-hand side is a company's stats. And you can see what they expect. 1,000 prospects engaged per month will equal 4 clients. And on this side here, you've got 200 relationships, 200 conversations, 35 discussions, 10 new clients. Now, this is something, both our monthly stats, and I want to kind of add into this some of the reasons. Hi, Rachel, Sandeep, hi, Alex. On the left-hand side of the slides, let me put them up for you. That would help, wouldn't it? So here you can see some stats. This is not social selling. 1,000 prospects to 4 sales. That's a 0.4% conversion rate. Can you see this on your screen now? Hopefully you can see that. Let me know if you still can't see it. And this is what you should be achieving. You should be going from 200 relationships to 10 clients. That is a conservative effort from one person using social selling principles. Hopefully this shows on your screen now. I can see it here. Let me just try again. Let me just play with the technology. Just bear with me. Technical glitches. It's there, but for some reason it's not there on the channel. So let me just share my screen again. Hopefully you can see me. Just bear with me. Technical glitches. It's there, but for some reason it's not there on the channel. So let me just bear with me. Is it here? Let me just share my screen again. Yeah, Alex, you got to love live events. So yes, we've got it. There we go. Right. So as you can see here, this is somebody else's stats. I've just, screenshotted it from their website. And it's not a brilliant result. If this is social selling, it's not a brilliant result. Now, to be fair to them, they're not selling the full deal. What I'm showing here is when somebody does it themselves. So if somebody can do this for themselves, this is what they can get without working too hard. Yes, there's a change in mindset. Yes, there's a change in the way you operate, but actually it's more productive. And so the first thing I want to say really is, if your social selling strategy involves volume, I don't mean volume as in scaling up a person's effort, but I mean, if it needs volume, it's probably ineffective. Somebody who's done this for a little while, I'm not a natural cold caller. I hate it. I'm thin-skinned, but I'm pretty good at striking up conversations. I'm actually in person probably a bit socially awkward, and some would say I'm a bit introverted. But digital conversations I can do really well at, and with a bit of practice, anybody could do it. Just the other day, I was working with a group of people, and I said to them, let's all get together now and let's deliberately choose to start conversations with our prospects now. And everybody was having a go, and people got conversations going in the first few minutes. And one of the people on the call, business owner, actually got the conversation going with a potential prospect there and then. But here's what's happening. And you'll know that this is happening because you see it all the time. People, and because LinkedIn's the big deal for social selling for B2B, it's not the only way to do it, but it is the big deal right now. You see everybody doing this. And if you're a LinkedIn user, you'll know LinkedIn emailed most of their user base yesterday evening and said to them, don't be connecting and doing all of this stuff, build real relationships, because they know that LinkedIn, they know that the quality of the network and the quality of the response will go down if people continue to do what they think is social selling, which is in actual fact just, hitting people up and hoping people will buy. Now, why is this important? Because what happens is, if this culture is allowed to perpetuate itself, it will actually destroy your leads, your potential customer base. It will ruin it. Why will it ruin it? In Europe, at the very least, there's GDPR. Now, just because you message somebody and they don't respond doesn't mean it's illegal to carry on or it's against the rules. But one of the main bases of prospecting that you're legally allowed to do is the basis of legitimate interest. And that is just a clause within GDPR that says if you want to, reach people, you have to justify why you're doing it. And one of those reasons is it's in your legitimate interest and you believe it has benefit to them. Now, here's the problem with this activity, following the 1,000 people to 4 sales. If people say no thanks, it weakens your GDPR argument of why to reach them. So in theory, if somebody declines your offer based on this kind of activity, and then you try and go back again, it weakens your argument and justification. That's number one. So DPO officers will probably have a hissy fit if this activity is happening. The second reason that it's a bad idea for this is because if you do this, particularly on LinkedIn, but also I'll come to cold email outreach in a second. If you do this and then you try again in the future, they're going to see the history of what's happened before. And so all of this stuff weakens your impact, weakens your brand. And actually, if you do this right, you should get a reply the first time you start the conversation if you do it right. If you do it wrong, you will have to do that. I'm just following up, just floating this back to the top of your inbox. Yes, that will be effective to a degree, but what you really want is people to be responsive to you. And that's a culture thing, it's a knowledge thing, and it's a new behavior thing. And we'll go through that. So this stuff that's happening in the name of social selling is actually different. Alex, I've actually had conversations with the ICO about LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's terms of service don't usurp the GDPR. And in fact, the case officer I spoke to at the ICO said that they deem LinkedIn's InMail the same as email. And so it's actually governed by PECR and GDPR, albeit you can use legitimate interest and justify legitimate interest because it's a business platform. So it's a far more nuanced situation, and the ICO is actually forming policy about this at the moment. So I'm curious to see how they're going to deal with this, because who says who's a business and a using LinkedIn for personal rules? Sales Navigator is exactly the same, Alex. There is a GDPR implication of using a social platform. It doesn't stop you processing the information for your own benefit. It doesn't stop all of those things because it's business to business, but it's really, really important. So Sales Navigator is exactly the same. So the goal of social selling is conversations. The more conversations you have with the right people, the more discussions, and the more what we call discussions is actually where you're starting to talk about business. So relationships, conversations, and discussions is what you want. So here it is. What is social selling? Building relationships, developing conversations, and turning those into discussions. That's effectively social selling. Yes, you can promote yourself, but you do it in a way where it's relevant. You do it in a way where you're getting reciprocal communication. It doesn't involve cold pitching. There's no risk of brand damage. It's conversational and relational, and it's proven to grow revenue and sales. And let me just put this into context. I'm working with a company at the moment who have been quite reliant on cold calling and calling of prospects to introduce their services. And of course, with the pandemic, less and less people have been at their landlines, and so they've struggled to reach out to people. And I've got friends in the cold calling world, that's what they do, but I personally think this is more effective when done well. And we went through some statistics, and if a salesperson, we're not talking about reaching consumers here. This whole session is really not about consumer sales. This is about B2B. And so if a salesperson spends 8 hours in a day, and this is just one person's experience, and I've had another sales trainer's experience who said 300 calls might get you three or four decent conversations, just because of communication issues, because of gatekeeping, all of those things. It might be 300 dials to actually get to a conversation. But this salesperson said in 8 hours of their day, based on their experience, and they've done lots of this kind of work, not B2C, all decision maker stuff, business decision makers. 8 hours, they would probably get 4 meaningful conversations. 4. Now, if you're using social selling digitally through LinkedIn or other digital channels, and you're doing it right, in 2 hours, you should get as many conversations as a cold caller would get in 8 hours. Now, there's a change of the way of working and all of that kind of stuff. But one of the arguments I have for proper, as I would say, I'm a northerner, proper social selling, is that you will spend time doing it. You will spend time generating it, but the results out will be better. But here's the problem with the culture issue. If you've had a business that's used to jumping on the phone and making calls and not getting through to people, if you've had that culture in your business, if you've had that method of working at some point, social selling doesn't feel as productive to maybe that person. In that, for an example, if I spend a day calling people, I might have not got through to 90 or 95% of the people, but I've done a lot of stuff. Whereas with social selling, you'll do a lot of stuff in a lot less time and get more responses. If you want volume, my record doing this is 20 conversations with prospects in a day, from just building relationships and taking them to conversations. Yes, it's a bit of work, but my sale value and what I do is worth that investment. So I can go from 20 conversations in a day. That's when I'm in a conversation, I mean two-way messaging, and discussions, I mean they've actually gone on a call, we've explained what we do, they're interested, we put a proposal together, and then it's down to your close rate of your own proposals. So that's how I define this: building relationships, taking them to conversations, and then sales discussions, a call, a meeting, and a proposal. So I can get 20 conversations. If I do nothing else other than focus on this, and that might not be for you, you might be have split tasks, but 20 conversations a day, which would lead me to about 5 discussions, 5 serious discussions. So I can, in theory, if I don't do anything else, and of course I'm here doing this, so I'm not doing that right now, I can generate 20 discussions, proposals, quotes per week. Yeah. And mine are training proposals. So there's a big consideration period. They go into companies and they, deliberate and evaluate and all of those things. But that's what I do. And so if you're selling something for £500, this is probably the wrong thing. If you're selling something where there's a lifetime value of a customer that's worthwhile, or perhaps it's a more complex sell, perhaps it's something that is more solution and more bespoke, so you need to understand the customer better, this is the model of social selling that you should be using, because it is less confrontational, more relational, and it gets the person's buy-in to you before you ever make the pitch. So let me just show you some of the things. The old culture, or what a lot of people are doing with social selling, is literally trying to find the people who are ready to buy now. They're trying to find leads. What they should be doing is nurturing all sorts of businesses at various different levels of where they are. And we know, and most business people here will know, that if you can put a light bulb moment on for a prospect, that's where the biggest value is. And so the sales team, typical sales team and cold calling teams who are targeted, and there's nothing wrong with targets. We've got team who are targeted. They end up focusing on the people who they can convert now at the expense of doing the work to nurture the people who could be clients in the future and customers in the future. So we've just put this metric up that about 3% of your market and your customer base actually looking for what you've got to offer right now. 7% are sat on the fence. They could be tire kickers. They could be people who are just not sure. And then there's a vast array of people who are, you know, if you ask them, do you want our product or service? They'd probably say, we're not looking. But when you start to talk to them about the problems and the pain points and all of those things, they start to consider it more seriously. They start to see that there's a better way of running their business. There's a better way of delivering this particular objective. And that's where the value for you as a business is. Social selling should be about building the relationships with the people before they decide to go to market and look for prices. Yes, you don't want to miss those opportunities, but you actually are looking for them all. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me get to the fundamentals of social selling and why it's important. And I'm always going to compare this to cold calling because that's the background I've developed my methodology and the Maverick methodology on, because I didn't want to do cold calling. So just forgive me if I'm comparing it directly to cold calling all the time, but this is it. So Zach, yes, social selling first, and then take people to a phone call once they've understood the value of having a conversation. So with social selling, my job is not to convince the person in a digital platform that I've got a solution for them and the call is just to discuss it and agree it. My job with social selling is to convince people that I have an answer to a problem within their business and it's worth their time to have the conversation. Because think about it like this. If we've just flicked to the other slide, the vast majority of your customer base don't even realize, and I know so many people say this to me, I try and reach out and talk to people and tell them about what I'm doing, and they say they're not interested or they don't need it. But I know that they need it. And it's because they're further down in this process. They're not there yet. They haven't connected your project, product or service or solution to the symptoms that are going on in their business. So they've not connected the two together. And social selling is really about convincing people you understand a problem that they've got and that it's worth their time to have a conversation and a discussion with you. And then you introduce not the bells and whistles of your product or service, but you introduce how your product and service can solve the problem, can get them somewhere they haven't been yet. And so in essence, your social selling activity, your activity on the digital platforms, is selling the benefit of a conversation. That's what you're trying to do. But yet lots of people, if you go on LinkedIn and all these different places, they're trying to tell you how amazing their product is and how many awards they've won and how many gadgets it can do and all the gobbledygook that it does, but actually never really address this thing can solve this problem. Or we know how to do this, this, and this. We can help businesses who are struggling with this or that or the other. They always go on about the bells and the whistles and the gadgets and the features, not the pain that the business might have and the outcome that it can bring. And that creates the curiosity of going, I need to know more about what these guys are sharing. And that's really what social selling's job is to do, is to get these people curious, to have a conversation where you can show them, you can join the dots between your product and the situation that's going on in their business, whether that be good, bad, or ugly. So why should a client choose you? Now, this is absolutely important. When you're cold calling, and again, if there's cold calls watching, apologies, I'm picking on cold calling, but any kind of sales strategy, when you're doing this, you're reaching out, you're picking up your phone, you're doing the dials. Yeah. If you get somebody to bite, if you get somebody to pay attention to you and bite, here's what you have to do. In that call, you have to build up enough awareness, belief, and relationship to get them to give you a bit more time. And then you have to get them a bit more time to either get them on a call or video call, or get them to a demonstration, or get them to go to a proposal. If you're using social selling right on social media platforms, for an example, LinkedIn for B2B is obviously the huge one, but there's other channels and other methods you can use, but the principles are the same. You can front load a lot of that awareness, belief, and relationship before you ever try to start a conversation. So we know just, human beings, human psychology, the way we work, if we see a message over and over and over again, we tend to believe it. The more we hear it, the more we believe it. If we see something over and over and over again, we're more likely to remember it. And if we see the humanity of people, we're more likely to connect or have a relationship, albeit one-sided. And what I see, which is a real shame, is two things on LinkedIn. The first thing, as I say, a lot of sales reps not posting content. And that content helps their connections get to know them a little bit better, get to understand them a little better, and really build solid foundations of a relationship, build awareness in the business, and build belief that they can do what they say they can do. So for a customer, they have to be aware of you. They have to believe you to some degree, various different levels. But what I'm saying is you need to have a base level to build off of before you have a conversation. Alex, I'll come to how do you create conversation in a moment. So awareness, belief, and relationship is really important. And what we developed off the back of this is a 7-step strategy that is awfully simple, but without the kind of culture change, without the training and knowledge, is quite tricky. But I'll walk you through that in a second. But here's the fundamental thing about belief. Customers, and I've chosen belief as part of this deliberately, customers have to believe that you can do both the rep, the salesperson, and the sales rep and the company itself. They have to believe, first of all, the company can do what it says it can do, and the sales rep can do what they say the company can say it can do. So there's a belief in, are you full of shit or not, bluntly? There's so much going on social channels now. There is a cynicism. Then the second thing is, does the customer believe that potentially you could do it for them? Because that's two different things. Believing you can do what you say you can do and believing you can do what you can say you can do for them are two different things. It's the only way to get a sale. If you don't get over those 3 points, the sale won't happen, because the customer won't trust you, won't see how you can work together, won't see the relationship, and will be cautious because they don't know who you are. You can't prove with facts and make people believe you. It's something that they learn. It's something that they discover. The thing you can do is disarm people by building a repetitive process to build up relationship and engage with them and interact with them to ease that process. So people buy when they believe you can solve a problem. And that's the map of where you reach out. If your sales rep reaches them here, they're more likely to be transactional. So do you need a website? Do you need an ERP system? Do you need custom software development? Do you need cybersecurity? This is where people are, the closer the customer is in their journey to finding the solution, the more transactional your sales approach will be. The extreme of this on the far right-hand side here would actually be a tender. Now, it doesn't mean that customers won't go that way, but the closer you get here, the more you get to help them define the problem and how they want their outcome, the more you can do this without competition involvement. This is where value selling really happens, getting the airtime to actually value sell Down here, it's more transactional, competitive process. Every prospect goes through these stages. These are very simplistic stages because remember, whatever sales strategy you employ, it's not just a document that you've crystallized. It's something somebody has to work with on a daily basis. And so that's what's really important. You have to build and have your own team working with this on a daily basis. That's why I try and make everything really straightforward. Otherwise, what happens is people revert back to their default way of doing things. If they don't get it, if they can't use it, they just revert back to what they've always done that seems to, they're used to doing, they're comfortable doing, and so you end up in the same situation. So this is what we're trying to do. Reach people, use content and move people up, but also engage with people and have conversations about problems and outcomes that's going on in their business, want to achieve with their business, what's going on in their business, symptoms, consequences of things, and talk to these people and move them on. But the key is relationships, conversations, and then discussions. So in other words, in LinkedIn terms, you need to be connected, you need to build a relationship, and then you need to actually turn that relationship into a business conversation, which probably will be offline, either on the phone or a Zoom call or something similar. So that's the journey. So how do you achieve this in your business? And then I'll show you our 7-step process. I think I'll have to flick slides to show you this. So the first thing about this is practice. So the only way people learn a new routine is to actually do it. And so you have to get people into a process where they're free to do it and free to implement it. Otherwise, they revert back to what they've always done. And that's the key element in changing the culture of how you sell and the environment you sell and the way you sell. If you don't change the culture, people will pay lip service to social selling. They'll say social selling and then send 500 messages and get 2 sales. The problem is that it gets harder and harder and harder as a business. Matt, I'll answer your question in a second. So practice and culture are critical to this, and the learning is obviously the how-tos. Now, one of the things that I encourage people to do once they practice is to literally go through and look at some of the practice sessions. And I've done this with a sales team where we've literally gone through practice sessions with prospects, and they learn and document their own success and failure. The reason that's important is that if they don't document their own success and failure, they end up in a situation where they won't do anything. And this is, again, a culture thing of allowing people to be free to fail in this so that they can get their own habits going and learn what works for themselves. You've seen this yourself. If you've ever worked with any salespeople, they learn something, they implement it and get a result, and so they go all in on it and they use it and grab hold of it. But if they don't learn it and they don't implement it and they don't see a result, they will end up in a situation where they just revert to type. So Mark said, being in early is great, but what about the issue with the transactional, late to the party BDM, pulling his pants down and undoing all your hard work and early engagement in a world where price is king? So Mark, what I would say there is the key thing is there will always be a BDM coming in to squeeze the price and push that there. But in my experience, if you get in early enough, then you can avoid them ever going to market with the issue. The other thing is if you help them move that process, and I've done this with some big companies and done it with and to some big companies, if you start early enough in the process, you guide that. And so everything that they do is then built upon what you've learned. So that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in that all the people coming afterwards, if they come afterwards, will be defined by you and your model. So that's a good side of it. The downside of that is obviously you help the customers find the solution and then they could just go off to tender. That's always going to be the case. And if you go into tender situations, there will be a natural bias to you because you were there at the beginning, not always. So that's key. I'd also look at, on the price point issue, if you're going to lose on price against another company, you need to engineer your offer. So I'll give you an example of this, that people buy solutions to problems. As soon as it gets down to brass tacks, there's no difference between the problem, between the, evaluating your bells and whistles and their bells and whistles. What you have to do is a principle called dispositioning in your proposal and your offer, where you insert elements of your offer that you know will solve the problem, and you know that other people will potentially just talk about bells and whistles. And it's all about people understanding and the customer understanding you understand what they're trying to solve. You will always get BDMs ripping in at the last minute, but you have to rely on the fact that you've built a solid relationship and interaction with the customer, that it can defend itself against that. If you're talking to a transactional buyer, you're either too late in the stage, in which case you just have to do the best job you can to stand out from the competitor, talk about the pain and the outcomes that you can help them achieve. That's the best job you can, but in future, go earlier and earlier. So that's the key here: culture, learning and practice, and understanding the methodology behind getting to people where they're at their pain. So let me just flick screens, and I'm going to open another slide for you and talk about this 7-step process which we teach, because I think it's very, very important from a point of view of, if you want to generate business, particularly for LinkedIn, this is it. Now, it's harder to do sorry, let me just pull this slide up. I'm giving you a quick overview, like a fly through today, but if you want to catch up with me and have a call about it, absolutely, just send me a message on LinkedIn or email the office, hi@maverick.co.uk, and we can have a conversation. So this is a very simple map. And again, the map gives salespeople confidence to implement. There's obviously a lot more detail to go into this in terms of each specific business. But effectively, this is a foolproof methodology that you can use to grow conversations. Step 1, like and comment. We have a separate process if they're inactive accounts on LinkedIn. This is a LinkedIn example, but we design these models in lots of different ways for different scenarios for businesses. Send your connection request and a thank you and a short intro, and then you continue to like and comment and interact with that prospect. Not about business at this point, you're just interacting with them as people. And then step 7, when you get the sense, and we've got various triggers built into this process, that you actually then talk about business, and not a sales pitch, a conversation. And a conversation is very different. If your LinkedIn messages look more like emails, you're not starting conversations. If your LinkedIn email messages look more like WhatsApp, you may be doing it right. You might be too familiar or too informal, but you're probably closer to the right track than if you're writing them to look like emails. How long does this take? So this process to implement, I teach it. I've just finished a session with a company. They did it over 2 days, two-hour sessions. And then we do a coaching session with each salesperson so they can tailor it, where we do it in real time. But literally this process here, I know one person who's implemented this during the practice sessions, and they went from 1 to 7 in the same session. That's highly unlikely, to be honest, that you would do that. If you're selling something sub £5,000, then and I say £5,000 because generally it's a different level of decision once you get over that. It's a different person within the business once you get over £5,000. Not always. You can implement this in a week with one prospect, a week. If you are selling a real big ticket item, so I've worked with companies selling £250,000 products and £1 million products, they might work on this prospect because this prospect's so important to them. They might work on this prospect over a few months or a few weeks. It really comes down to what's the value of the offering you want to make to them. And, you know, the depth of relationship will determine whether they give you a fair hearing. And the more senior they are, so if it's a CEO of a company with 1,000 employees, that's going to take more work than a managing director of a company with 5 employees, because they're closer to the coal face, for want of a word. So that's the process that I teach people. And so I just want to kind of dart back and just go into a kind of Q&A session and go, look, if this is what you're doing, this is not social selling. This is social selling. Real relationships that didn't turn to conversations, discussions, and clients. And I've put some figures in here that if you were all out or doing this every day, all month, you're full-time BDM or salesperson, you can improve this. You can improve this. This is somebody doing it as part of their job, but not their full-time job. Yeah, this is, when you look at this, you go 75. So that's roughly building 50 relationships a week, turning, now I'm showing my maths up, but turning about 18 of them, 17 and a half or whatever it is, of them into conversations a week. Yeah, if you're full-time BDM, that's like 17 and a half divided by 40 hours. It's a long time. You've got a lot of free time there doing that. And of those 75, half will turn into discussions. And then this, really, the discussion rate is based on, effectively, this bit's down to you. If you've got them into discussions and you've got them into a phone calls and put a proposal to them, that's based on your close rate. It's based on your targeting, your deeper understanding of your customer base. And just as an aside, before I kind of shut up and say questions, if there are any, we do have a customer pain point worksheet that we'll happily give to you. Just drop us an email and we'll email you a copy absolutely free. Just drop us an email there. I've just put that up on the slide just so that you can get it. We're not going to kind of commit you to anything. There's no call. We'll just email it you. That's exactly how we work. But this is what I would encourage you to think about. This is not social selling. This is. But there are three things. You've got to learn how to do it. You've got to shift your culture to make this work. And then you've got to, practice and build your practice and your good practice. Implement, improve, and almost build your own workbook. Now, we've helped clients do that. We've helped clients develop script based off this. But ultimately, every relationship and every conversation will be different. So more like you need talking points than actually a script. Any questions? Probably loads of people, but I would encourage you, we'll leave this section up so you can come back to the event. You can come back to YouTube and look at this again. If you want that document, I'm more than happy to email it to you. Just drop us an email. We'll send it to you. If you want a copy of the slides from this, happy to share them as well. And, from our point of view, social selling is going to become even more important for big businesses too. We're already talking to a lot of businesses, bigger businesses with large sales teams where they're going, we've got to master this because home working, remote working is going to become more important, more dominant, and it's going to stay dominant. But also you've got this issue of people know they can ignore you now. In the days when you could pick the phone up and get hold of a decision maker on the phone, it was harder from an etiquette point of view to actually hang up. It was seen as rude. You'd get a little bit of a fair hearing, at least until the sales rep stopped for breath. But now they can just ignore you. And so it's ever so important you front load that relationship, that awareness and that belief so that it gives you the time of day with people who are far too busy. They've got too much going on, and you're literally trying to convince them that you've got something that's worth them sparing time. And that's the key to social selling, convincing people that they should spare you time for a conversation and a business discussion. Yeah, Ryan, of course, will happily let the recording, email the recording round. So if you registered on LinkedIn or Eventbrite, we'll send it. Rachel, I think all levels are receptive to this methodology, but I think there's obviously going to be some people that are out of reach in this methodology. You know, the CEO of Vodafone is going to be a tough job. The marketing director of Disney might be a tough job, but there will be people who aren't as difficult. And the ones where it will be difficult, that will be about building relationships within the organizations to get that introduction. It's funny, actually, because the EA and the PA can be just as powerful. Fernando, I think the key thing is growing your network with the right people. And actually, I would so Fernando, I would be thinking about, do you understand deeply your customers' pain points? Because they respond to the pain points. They don't respond to what you're offering. They respond to your pain points. Terry, number 6, Terry, it's the conversation that matters. It's not. You shouldn't be talking business at number 7. It should be about turning it into a conversation. Now, in our workshops, we show you how to do this so you get response. Not everybody responds, and not everybody responds instantly. But one of the things you can fall foul of with automation, and you'll have seen this, is people send lots of messages, they get replies, and it takes them a long time to respond to them. So it is about creating conversations. Regency, 80% of business decision makers in a recent survey, I think HubSpot and LinkedIn did it, 80% of them actually said that they would vet somebody on LinkedIn, and they would do so. 80% of B2B buyers say that they decide who to buy from buy from the first person they met. That's the first thing. The second thing is that something like 84% vet or start their conversations with people they end up doing business with on LinkedIn, particularly now. The art of this is not getting connected. The art of this is getting into conversation. And this is what most people on LinkedIn don't understand. They think if they blast their information out, and Terry, I'm not saying you're doing this, by the way, they think if they blast their information out, that will get them a result. And that's what you end up with, the 1,000 to 4 sales. The art of this is to actually generate conversations. So we have a workshop on this. We have a public one and one we do in-house closed shop for businesses. If you'd like some more information on how we do them, or the conversations and how to start them with prospects, it's all covered in our workshop about how to use LinkedIn for this anyway. Drop us an email. We'll send you some details when the next public workshop is, and we'll send you some details when the next closed shop, when we can do closed shops. Okay, I need a drink because I've been talking for nearly an hour. But do come find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. If you ask, can you pick my brains, I might just reply and say yes. So do come find me on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for spending time listening to me. Sorry about the glitch with the slides. But if there's anything we can do to help you, come find us on LinkedIn, drop us an email. But I just hope you get some value and see that the power of a conversation is worth more to you than anything else. And that's the art you should be mastering in terms of social selling. That's what gets you the sales. That's what gets you the results. And that's what will ultimately be the success driver of your sales team or you on LinkedIn. Not how many messages you can send. It's how many conversations you can generate, and then turning those conversations into discussions. And by that, I mean business discussions. And that's effectively what we do. Right. I'm going to say thank you so much for paying attention to me, and hopefully I'll see you on LinkedIn. Drop us an email if you want any of the free resources we talked about today, the replay, all that kind of stuff. We'll do that for you. And I'll bid you farewell. Thank you.